I want to now turn to Tania Hary, who is the Director of International Relations at Gisha, the Legal Center for Freedom of Movement. Gisha is an Israeli NGO founded in 2005. They work on protecting freedom of movement of Palestinians, particularly in Gaza. They promote rights guaranteed by international and Israeli law. I think a lot of people in the room probably first heard of Gisha in the context of the Fulbright students in Gaza who were having trouble getting out of Gaza, and Gisha took the lead on that and got to know a lot of people in Washington in the process. Tania has worked on fundraising and advocacy initiatives for other not-for-profit organizations, working on human rights in Iran, children's rights in Argentina, and the rights of refugees. She has a BA from the University of California at Santa Cruz and an MA from the New School in New York. So Tania, I'm going to ask you more or less the same question, and I want to put this to you in the context of the questions that we're all hearing, or the defenses. People say there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The response we hear from Israeli officials, from the embassy, is this is ridiculous. There's tons of aid moving in every day, every week. It's plenty. There is no crisis. Looking at the issues that you cover, and Gisha has also taken the lead on pressing the Israelis on what is and isn't allowed into Gaza in terms of commodities. Can you talk about whether or not there's a humanitarian crisis, looking at access to goods, the ability of the economy to function, and the ability of the people to function in a healthy way?
Thank you, Lara. Thank you all for coming. I really want to say, first of all, that I agree with Ami that there's a real problem here in the fact that there's never been a definition of a humanitarian crisis. I don't know what that definition is, and I don't believe that Israel has defined it for itself either. We've been pushing for several years, actually, to ask Israel to publish information that is guiding this policy, to say, okay, you've said that the policy is one of economic warfare, economic sanctions. It's designed to prevent people from moving and moving goods, but not so much to cause a humanitarian crisis. Okay, we understand that, but we want to know, how are you measuring if a crisis occurs? What does that really mean? What is the minimum? What goods are allowed in and not allowed in? And I think that this would help us as Israelis judge if that's a policy that we want to support. And I think for the United States and for others in the international community who have supported this policy, they also need that information to make a more sound decision. I also want to say that I really resent the question if there is a humanitarian crisis. I think that we want to strive for more, and in most parts of the world we are striving for more. Other parts of the world, we're talking about the Millennium Development Goals. Usually we talk about a minimum as something we want to raise people up to. We want to make sure that enough people are going to school, that people have enough to eat, that health indicators show that there's enough inputs into the medical system, that people have enough medicine. And to my knowledge, this is the only place that I can think of where we're trying to deliberately push people down to a minimum, but to make sure that they're not going too far. We've seen over the past few years that this is a very dangerous place to push people down to. That in the case where the crossings are closed completely, such as during the war, such as when there are actual attacks on the crossings, that if supplies are so low, then we can't guarantee the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. That's certainly what happened during the war. We saw that 1 million people were without electricity, 800,000 without access to water. That's, for me, a crisis. I think, though, also that we want to strive for more than that. We want to be asking not just are people starving, not just are patients getting to medical treatment, but also about the other kinds of indicators that are important to us. So, for example, are students able to access education? Do children have school materials? Do people have access to jobs? This is important to me as an Israeli. I want my neighbors to have access to the same opportunities. I see a lot of young people here. As young people, we understand that we're not going to have hope. We're not going to want to move forward in a positive way if we don't have access to jobs, to education, frankly, to enjoyable things as well. I mean, one of the things that's happened in this closure is that Israel has defined that certain items are luxury items. So things like chocolate have not been coming through. It means that during holidays, parents aren't able to give their kids chocolate and candy. I mean, frankly, I don't see how that protects Israeli security. I want to say also that some of the indicators are quite troubling. And again, I don't know what number would indicate to us that this is a crisis or not. But we do know that about 90 to 95% of the water in Gaza's aquifers is not suitable for drinking. We know that about 40% of the population is unemployed. And we know that many more are paid by the Palestinian Authority or by Hamas officials, but are not necessarily productive members of society. The industrial sector has completely collapsed. About 90% of factories have shut down in the Gaza Strip, and the rest are functioning at a lower capacity than they can, because the inputs aren't coming in for what these factories and manufacturers need to operate. So it means that on the ground, you can see this in the lists that we've published about what items can and can't come in. And we've been giving the examples over and over again. But for example, you can bring in these small packets of margarine, but you can't bring in industrial-sized margarine. At the same time, you can buy Israeli-made cookies. That was just recently approved now for coming in. But the people are saying in Gaza, we don't want to just be able to purchase cookies made in Israel or made anywhere else. We want to be able to make our own cookies and sell them inside of Gaza. People are saying these days, we don't need more food. There is enough food. We want jobs. We want to be able to manufacture. We want to be self-sufficient. We don't want to depend on charity and on aid or on Israel. We want to depend on ourselves. And frankly, that's a message that speaks to me and I think should speak to people here. It's a direction that we want to see Gaza moving in. And I don't see that it's contrary to our security interests or to any kind of other political interests either.